Don Prudhomme, a four-time NHRA Winston Funny Car champion with over 30 national event wins to his credit, six-time winner of the prestigious U.S. Nationals, and the only person to win it in both Top Fuel and Funny Car. Nicknamed the Snake, he has amassed a string of records and wins that stretch across the country of quarter-mile strips. His story, the rise to racing stardom of a young hot rodder from Southern California's San Fernando Valley, is a classic American success story. Horatio Alger in a fire suit, a rags to riches tale with a moral, a lesson about needing too much, about wanting so much there is no enough. It is a story about a man discovering that within the things that drive him are the things he enjoys, and that success is measured in more than win lights. This is the story of Don Prudhomme, professional racer. There are two sides to Don Prudhomme. There is the private man, the man whose greatest possessions are his racing memories. Then there is the racer, the better known, the man whose achievements are among drag racing's greatest memories.
You know, in other words, when that track opens in the morning, I like to be there, and when it closes, I like to be there. You know, because you only have a certain amount of time, man, because you got all the rest of the week just to think about it and work on the car, but you can't actually be at the racetrack. So those every moment to me really counts at a drag strip. But mainly because you only have a certain amount of time to do your job and do it right. And each and every second, every hour is very, very important to you. I just like being out at the track. I mean, that's home to me. It's I'm relaxed at the track because I'm fixing to do what I do best, and I can't wait to do it.
For the private Don Prudhomme, his race shop is a repository of memories.
I'll come down to the shop and you know, like if I have a week off or something and the guys are out of town and things are real quiet here, I'll come down and just look around and use the phone. And I just like being here. I'm just comfortable here. This motorcycle is, well, it was the first thing with an engine in it that I really own. And this isn't the exact one. The one I had as a kid was stolen out of my garage, and it broke my heart. And I used my money from collecting eggs and mowing lawns to buy this thing, and it was stolen, so it was really a setback in my life.
I hate to say it, but his reputation probably preceded my earliest impression of him. Him and a friend of his that he's still close friends with didn't have the best reputations in junior high school. They were kind of the guys you wanted to stay away from. But he ended up in my 7th grade art class, so that's when I first met him, first on, without the reputation. Actually, he was a pretty nice guy.
I was good with my hands, so I could take things apart and put it back together again. And I thought, aha, you know, this is it. And so my whole attention went into cars. And my dad's influence, because of being in the automotive business, you know, he had a paint shop and so on. I was around that a lot, and of course, you know, cars were.
Southern California in the mid-50s was the magic kingdom of hot rodding, the birthplace of modern drag racing. Growing up in the San Fernando Valley, just north of Los Angeles, Prudhomme experienced all the prerequisites of a hot rodder, street racing, and a membership in a car club, the Road Kings of Burbank. Growing out of the street racing and car club scene was a new version of an old car ritual, timed acceleration test, or drag racing.
But where I really first fell in love with it was San Fernando Drag Strip. It was the first time I went to San Fernando Drag Strip and went up down the quarter mile, you know, with the starting system and the flag starter, I should say, back then. And that I think that's where I really fell in love with it.
Drag racing is the only thing that he's ever really pursued to try to be #1. His other interests, he's never really devoted the time and energy that he has to drag racing.
You have to remember, I was a kid that didn't do very well in school, didn't know where I was going, didn't have any idea about my future. I thought perhaps I'd end up painting cars for the rest of my life. In drag racing, when I got involved with drag racing and to drive this car, it was just like I found my niche in life. I mean, I knew, and there wasn't any money in it in those days, but I knew someday that I would be doing this for a long time and make money at it, because drag racing was starting to grow a little bit back then.
In 1959, Don Prudhomme was spending his weeks working, painting cars, and his weekends racing. Among the people Don raced was Tommy Ivo, another member of the Road Kings. Ivo, a child star in movies and television, was making a second career out of racing. In the summer of that year, Don crewed for Ivo on a match race tour back east.
I was a tire wiper. I helped him drive the car down the road, you know, the truck, and so that's when I really started understanding that drag racing could be professional someday, and a guy could make a living at it, because Ivo was getting paid to run these dates. So in '59, we left out on tour and spent that whole summer out there going around the country. Went to New York, Pennsylvania, places that as a kid didn't know it really existed unless, just reading about it. It was quite an experience for me. Tom was a big deal. Tom was a tremendous drag racer back then. He's not racing today, but back then he was the guy to beat. And so to be with him, and he taught me a lot about the sport and taught me a lot about cars.
Drag racing in 1961 and 62 was a sport in its adolescence. Drag strips were springing up literally everywhere, the opportunities to race plentiful. It was a sport of junkyard parts and shade tree mechanics. There was no money in the sport. People, well, most people, were not paid to race. Drag racing was a hobby, and to be good at it required a tremendous commitment, a true desire to race.
Just put every dime I had into a car and kept it up. I knew I just wanted to do it, and at any cost, whatever it took. And I had a chance to put a blown engine in the car, a blown fuel engine. And so the local guy here, Dave Zuchel, matter of fact, got together with him and we stuck his engine in the car, and went to San Fernando Drag Strip and ran around 180 miles an hour with it, which was an all-time speed at that particular time. And that was it, From then on, I wanted to run fuel and had to have a blower on it.
In 1962, the biggest race of the year for fuel racers was the Bakersfield March Meet, sponsored by a local car club, the Smokers. Officially called the U.S. Fuel and Gas Championships, it attracted the biggest and baddest of the nitro racers, the top names in Top Fuel. In 1962, Don Prudhomme and Dave Zuchel, the local boys, won.
You're talking about a guy from the San Fernando Valley that would, I think most people back then didn't think I'd amount to much, and to win a big race like that. It was in the local paper here, the Valley Green Sheet. Don Prudhomme from Van Nuys wins. It's the Smokers race in Bakersfield. I mean, wow. That was everything. I was good at it. I was real good at it, and I knew I was good at it, and I wasn't scared of anything. That was just, I'd drive anything that had wheels on it, and I just did a good job at driving the car. Of course, fortunately, Dave Zuchel was an incredible engine builder back then, and he supplied the power to do it with, and Kent Fuller built the chassis. So we were a great team.
In 1962, Don Prudhomme, car painter by day, drag racer by weekend, got the opportunity of a lifetime, a ride in one of the best fuel cars in Southern California. The Greer Black Prudhomme Dragster, as it was known, was perhaps the most dominant car in Southern California, winning almost 90% of its races.
You're talking 1962, and you're talking no money in the sport. absolutely no money, junkyard parts. A guy by the name of Tom Greer, he owned a company by the name of Greer Machinery. He bought and sold big used equipment, machinery equipment. He got involved with Keith Black and told Keith that he would back this car, and Keith built the engines for the thing. He built racing engines, and he was real big in the boat business. They ran a lot of drag boats out of his shop, and they held a lot of records. And I figured if ever you could get involved with him just somehow, you know, with one of his engines in a drag racing car, a fuel car, it would really be a winner.
I didn't know Don Prudhomme, but Ken Fuller did. And so Ken had suggested Don Prudhomme as a driver, and I valued Ken's advice because he was in that part of the deal and he was working on the car for us.
I was over at Kent Fuller's shop over in Van Nuys and sitting on the bench like I am right now, and someone said, "You had a call." I had a call, and I got to the phone, and it was Keith Black. And he offered me a ride in a car that they were building. So this car was going to be called the Greer, Black, and Prudhomme car.
So when I hired Don, I set a deal up. I said, well, why don't we make it this way? Whatever the car takes in gross, I'll split between you and Tommy. Figuring the car wouldn't make any money. And that would be fair to the driver and fair to the owner and everything. And Don thought that was a good deal. Tommy thought that was a good deal.
I had a big-time ride, but I didn't consider myself a professional racer. I still worked, mind you. I'd worked still painting cars, and I was married then, and just got married. And I drove the car on the weekends, but after working all day, I would go down to Keith's and work on the car and do whatever I could do. So what money I made is money we would win. That's how you made money.
Southern California was a hotbed of drag racing activity, and without ever leaving the area, Greer, Black, Prudhomme could race at any one of 5 or 6 tracks in a given week. While the car was gaining favor with fans, other racers were learning to avoid it.
He had 4 or 5 drag strips that we could pick from every week. And matter of fact, we were so tough back then till the racers, would call Keith's shop, and find out where we're going to run that weekend. If we're going to go to Lyons drag strip, they're going to go to Irwindale, or vice versa. So we were tough, man.
The Greer, Black, Prudhomme dragster was a phenomenal success, largely because of the teamwork of Prudhomme and Black. Both men had dedicated themselves to doing what they did better than anyone. Don as driver, Keith as engine builder.
Don Prudhomme was totally determined. He had a seeming deal where he moved, no big mad rush until it came time to race.
In those days, to win a race, guys would smoke the tires the whole quarter of a mile. That's how you did it. Well, Keith understood that if you could slip the clutch and not smoke the tires so much and apply the horsepower to the ground, he'd have it. He was way ahead of all the rest of the racers, you know, as far as technology and so on these cars. He understood how a fuel engine should work and the fuel system and all that.
Greer, Black, and Prudhomme were successful because of the effort its principals put into their operation. But their 90% win ratio was more a reflection of the sport at that time than of their abilities.
Today, any car running that qualifies can beat any other car that's there. That wasn't that way then. You'd have maybe 2 or 3 tough races out of the whole flock of cars, and the rest of them were fairly easy. So when you take a number like we compiled at that time, remember, that takes all of the guys you run against, not just the top ones. So because of that, that's why you could do it. You couldn't do that today. Absolutely impossible.
With the racing success of the Greer, Black, and Prudhomme dragster, Don Prudhomme got his first taste of financial success.
Don also was very thrifty, and I told the story before where he'd get his half of the money on Sunday, and then Monday he'd take the day off because he'd made money over the weekend, and come over, we'd have lunch and talk about, figure the next week out, or talk about just the racing, because we had fun doing it. It was fun. And he'd always have to borrow money to buy his lunch. I mean, I'd give it back, but it was a case of where he'd put it in the bank. And he's very thrifty. He drove an old car, and he saved his money. He always has been, still is.
It gave him something to do almost every Saturday night. But he still went to work every Monday morning and worked till Friday night, the same as we did. But what it did do it gave us the opportunity to create a little freedom. The car had just a very, very consistent win record. And each week he'd put that money in the bank to go towards either a house or whatever we wanted. We'd never had that flexibility before to have anything extra at the end of the week. It was all accounted for with our jobs, and everything that we had accumulated was gone. So I think that gave us a start, that car.
In the end, what made Greer, Black, and Prudhomme so good was that both Keith Black and Don Prudhomme were looking to make their mark, to prove something.
Don was very young and enthused. I was not anywhere near as young, but I was still very enthused. And we both had something to prove. Mountain climbers climb a mountain, they say it's because of there. Well, I don't look at it that way. I don't care what it is. If it's a race that you're racing some guy down the street when you're in school and you want to get there first, it's to prove to yourself you can do it.
I always wanted to prove myself. I want to prove myself today at the track. I don't care about how many national events I've won in the past. I think it's important each and every time you go out to prove yourself. And of course, back in 1965, I mean, you really wanted to prove yourself as someone in the sport. A name, a person, someone to wanted to be a champion someday.
Despite the phenomenal success of the Greer, Black, and Prudhomme dragster, towards the end of 1964, the car was running less and less. At least part of the reason was because Keith Black's engine business was growing, requiring more and more of his attention, leaving him less time to work on the car. Just when it appeared Don Prudhomme would be out of a ride, in stepped Roland Leong, a young drag racer from Hawaii.
In 1963, they invited us to go to Hawaii. A fellow by the name of Jimmy Fleward that owned the drag strip in Hawaii said, hey, we'd pay you guys to come over, and it was a paid vacation, and a chance to go to Hawaii was my first time, and to run the car. And of course, the car had a pretty good following, the Greer, Black, Prudhomme car. And when I was over in Hawaii, I should say, ran into a guy by the name of Roland Leong.
Well, I was kind of bouncing back between Hawaii and LA here, racing top gas drags at the time. And couldn't decide whether I wanted to stay in the mainland here or live in Hawaii. And decided to build a top fuel dragster, and kind of contacted Keith Black to build the engine because their car was the most successful there, the Greer, Black, and Prudhomme car.
So we took the car to Long Beach to run the first Hawaiian. Fueler and Roland was in the car, and Don was coaching him.
I took my first ride in it because I used to drive my gas dragsters, ended up crashing the car.
So he got down at the end, and he got out of the car, and of course it was minor damage, but I was really scared. And I told Roland right then and there, I said, if you want to be a driver, I don't want anything to do with this operation.
At the time, his business was beginning to pick up, Keith's was, and he didn't have time to keep running the Greer, Black, and Prudhomme car. So he called me in his office after that and said, why don't you and Prudhomme go racing, because I'm going to give up my car, and you can go run the car and Prudhomme can drive it. And that's kind of how it all got started between Don and myself.
Coming up, the Top Fuel Finals, and there's a lot at stake, including a brand new Ford camper for the winner. You Southern California race fans, I'm sure you recognize the car in the near lane. That's the Hawaiian, owned by Roland Leong, powered by a Keith Black engine, and driven by Don Prudhomme. In the far lane, Bill Alexander. Prudhomme wins.
The Winter Nationals victory made Leong and Prudhomme overnight sensations. Roland, anxious to go on tour, felt this was the perfect time to capitalize on their name recognition.
But I wanted to go back east because that's where all the big guys went, and the Greek and the Gartlets and people like that were doing very well then. So I kind of talked Prudhomme into going. Well, he was a little hesitant because as far as making a living, whether we could do this or not. Anyway, he got on the phone, started booking the car, and found out that we could race every week and get a guarantee to race the car.
That's when I hung up the spray gun and started carrying my helmet with me.
Well, I think at the time he and Lynn weren't married for that long, and he just moved from an apartment to bought his first house, and I guess the responsibility, or knowing that whether he is going to make a living or could make a living just going drag racing. For any of us, we never knew that.
The tour was a learning experience. It was an experience on being out on your own, basically, and Roland and myself being on our own. And we left Keith Black's shop in Southgate, California. He just shook his head. These two green young kids pulled out. We were going on a tour. We pulled out. He had his hand on his head. He couldn't believe that we were going to do this. But we did it. It was something that if you want to do it bad enough, I guess you can do it. And we wanted it real bad.
I can remember the first race we went to was Rockford, Illinois. First of all, we took a camper, not knowing, never been on tour before. We took a camper that had a 20-gallon gas tank. Well, we spent more time in the service station than we did on the road, just filling the truck up. Anyway, we get to Illinois, and first, the car we're going to race is a jet car. Well, I never really experienced being around any jet car, right? And in those days, we pushed the car to the starting line and got out and felt the heads, make sure the engine was warm enough before we let the car go down the track. Anyway, we pull around to the starting line, and here's this big monster of a car making all this noise and smoke coming out the back. And I said, well, I don't want nothing of this. So what I did was I just drove up next to Prudhomme, still in the tow car, waved him on, he went to the line, and we raced the drags.
Roland Leong and Don Prudhomme decided to end their tour in Indianapolis, Indiana at the NHRA U.S. Nationals. Considered the ultimate title to win, the 1965 Indy Nationals attracted hundreds of racers. When 5 days of racing concluded on Labor Day afternoon, the Hawaiian team had won their second major NHRA national event.
And in those days, everybody, whatever few dragsters showed up, raced on Sunday. Until there was one, what they call a class winner. Anyway, we ended up being the class winner. I don't know how many rounds we made just to be the class winner. Well, the class winner would sit out on Monday while the 16 low elapsed time cars raced. And then the winner of the race on Monday would race the winner of the class, which was us at the time, that we won on Sunday. Anyway, that was the most nervous time. I mean, watching everybody go up and down the track and run in their car, and here we were sitting in the pits, right, kind of deciding what to do, and it all counted on one run,
Well, it was a mind trip for us, because in those days, to win the Indy Nationals was something that you just dream about. And when we went into that event, and Keith Black came in to help us work on the car, and so they paired us up with Tom Eiffel. And of course, Tom Eiffel was the one that got me started in racing and drag racing, and on more of a professional basis, I guess. We beat him on the final round, and yeah, it was a highlight of the year to do that.
The moment Don Prudhomme committed to racing as a profession, he knew that to be successful as Don Prudhomme wanted desperately to be, he would have to take control of his life. He would have to run his own team. When transmission manufacturer B&M offered Don a chance to run its Torquemaster car, he saw it as a major step towards his goal.
I just had a feeling back in '65, as successful as Roland and I were, that I knew that to succeed in the business and to stay in drag racing, I had to be able to call the shots myself, because I didn't want anybody to predict my future. When Roland and I came off tour, we raced a little bit together, but I was approached by several people, and I was really cocky back then. I was approached by B&M people, B&M Torquemaster, to drive that car. And I thought, as a matter of fact, I was so cocky until I felt as though the driver was everything in the car. Oh yeah, well I was humbled quite fast. Matter of fact, the Winter Nationals in '66, I was there with the B&M Torquemaster car, and Roland Leong with Mike Snively at the wheel won the event. Well, I was crushed. It was a car I just quit, and we run okay with the B&M Torquemaster car, but not that well. And I really didn't know a lot about engines then. I thought I did, but I didn't realize it until I was responsible for the whole operation. We had to learn about burning pistons for one thing. I mean, it would burn pistons all the time, and always had the engine apart and cracking. You know, we had old junkyard 392 blocks. You have to go to a junkyard and find a new block and put in the engine. So, yeah, it was an experience, man. I mean, you know, I didn't know anything. Thought I was pretty sharp, and found out I didn't know much at all about cars.
Beaten down and frustrated by his experiences trying to race on his own, Don Prudhomme was uncertain about his future. He was literally saved by Carroll Shelby, renowned sports car racer and builder, who got involved with Don on the Shelby Super Snake. The car was owned by Lou Bainey and was powered by Ford's new fuel engine, built by Ed Pink. The professionalism of the operation and its subsequent success renewed Don's faith in his racing.
They asked me to drive the car, and by then, I'll tell you, I was fed up trying to tune my own car, run my own operation. I was crushed, to tell you the truth. I was beat down, disgusted with it, and didn't know where I was going to go from then on. And I got to ride with them, and that basically saved me. You know, it got me back in the winner's circle again. Lou Bainey and myself went back on tour with the Shelby car. We took it around the country, and that's how you made money. That's the only way you could survive in the sport was going on tour. So every summer, the guys would start setting out on tour, and we were part of that scene. Lou and I took the car around, and Ed Pink would come into some of the events and run the car.
By 1967, the NHRA National Tour had grown to 4 events. Besides the Winter Nationals and U.S. Nationals, there was also the World Finals and the Spring Nationals. His confidence restored by the Shelby deal, Prudhomme went to Bristol, Tennessee for the Spring Nationals with high hopes. To his delight, Don won the event, his 3rd NHRA title.
That was a big point. That was another turning point in my career. It put me back in the winner's circle again, and it taught me a lot. It showed me a lot. Then you get a good car and a good team, and from that point on, I understood what teamwork really, really meant, you know, and having a correct operation to go racing.
In many ways, Don Prudhomme was no different than a million other drag racers who dreamed of being champions. Don's drive to succeed, to win, made him different, and he pushed himself as hard in 1967 as he had in 1957.
But back then, I really put a lot of pressure on myself because, you know, I was trying to get ahead. I was trying to make something out of what I was doing, and I wanted to do it better than anybody. So I put a tremendous amount of pressure on myself, probably more than perhaps I should have, but that's the only way I knew how to do it and do it right.
Success brings recognition, and Don Prudhomme was quickly becoming one of the best-known drag racers in the country. But fame brought with it unwanted distractions.
I knew that if I won my share of races, that sooner or later I would get known, and so that's what that was all about. But I didn't really. I'm not saying I didn't really want to get known. I did, but I didn't really want all the fanfare behind it. I didn't want to have to stop and do interviews. I didn't want to have to do anything besides racing the car.
In 1969, Don Prudhomme took the biggest step of his career and bought his own race car. For the operation to be a success, Don knew that financing was required, and that meant a sponsor.
And that was neat, though. In 1969, when I finally got my own car, I took my savings. I was married and took my last buck. It didn't hawk my house, fortunately, but all the money that I had saved up in drag racing was in the bank, and didn't know exactly what to do with it until Lynn and I decided that I need to have my own car. So I was able to put down enough money to buy a chassis, and I approached Wynn Oil Company. And Garlett's had them as a sponsor at that time, and they're just right out here in California, in Azusa. And I approached him on it, and I got the deal, and I'll tell you, it was to have a sponsor back in '69, I mean, it was something else. Well, a lot of sponsorships back then was just parts, but I was able to put a deal together with him for money. And I needed money desperately. And I told them I needed it desperately. And matter of fact, I told them that if they would back me to that car, that I would do a job like they've never seen before. And a guy by the name of Carl Wynn, a fellow that owned the company, he believed in me, and he gave me a break, you know, and said, okay. we're going to give you this money. And boy, I'll tell you, I was able to buy a Keith Black engine for it, and I was able to buy a couple of spare parts, and I was on my way. But I learned at an early age in the sport that money was the key to the success, to doing it. I knew that I couldn't make enough money just working at a job to support the racing habits.
In 1969, Don Prudhomme won his second U.S. Nationals crown. He followed it up a year later with another win at Indy, defeating Jim Nicole in the finals. The joy of winning was tainted for Don by a clutch explosion that tore Nicole's car in half. Nicole survived the incident and was at the awards banquet that evening. Among Don's sponsors in 1970 was Mattel Hot Wheels. The toy company's involvement was one of drag racing's first non-automotive sponsorships and was the brainchild of Prudhomme's friend, Tom McEwen. Their relationship dated back to the late 50s in the burgeoning Southern California drag race scene.
I met McEwen at Lyons Drag Strip when I was with Tom Ivel about 1960. 59, 60, I was pushing Tom. In those days, you pushed the dragsters to get them started, and I was driving the push truck, and he jumped in the car to ride down the course with me to push Ivo.
One of the things that brought Don Prudhomme and Tom McEwen together was the similarities of their racing backgrounds. Living in Long Beach, McEwen also moved from street racing to drag racing, competing at all the Southern California strips. Like Prudhomme, Tom worked his way through a series of cars before getting the chance to drive a fuel dragster.
In those days, at Lyons, the premier cars in the country were there. I mean, you've got the Howard twin car, Muttersbach's twin car, the Albertson Olds. I mean, you had all the bad guys, and I was just cannon fodder in those days, you know. And I kind of learned how to drive them in those days. I learned how to leave pretty good, and then they'd just drive by me every time we raced. And I wasn't ever real good with wrenches and stuff, but I did okay. And I fast learned that that wasn't really what I wanted to do in drag race, was be a mechanic, you know, on the drive, you know. And I liked the competition, and it was kind of a sport in those days, you know. We all worked, and we went to the races on the weekends.
Don and Tom's early friendship was built on their racing, but when racing was not the subject, the two seemed an unlikely pair.
I was kind of withdrawn a little bit. I wasn't really one to go up and start talking to someone. Well, Tom kind of did all my talking for me. He was just that kind of guy. Tom didn't have to work at those days. He cruised around town in his Oldsmobile, and so he'd come over to the shop where I was working, and we'd go to lunch and spend time together. And of course, go to the drag strip. We'd see each other at the track all the time, and we'd become pretty good buddies.
You know, we came from different worlds growing up. He worked in a body shop and painted cars and did all that kind of stuff, and I was in Long Beach doing other things, and we came together at the drags, you know. Both liked whatever drawed us there, whether it was competition or ego, or you just wanted to go fast, or you were just queen for a day, or whatever you want to do, you know.
They both grew up totally differently. They probably had different needs from the sport. Don's was probably a little more driven than Tom's was. I don't think he grew up with the wants that Don did. I think that's why, basically, they're so different today. But I think at the time they were a real big compliment to one another.
Don Prudhomme and Tom McEwen would have done well in drag racing regardless of circumstance, but there's no denying that their nicknames help.
The snake came from one of the guys on the crew with the Guerre Black Prudhomme car. He was a guy by the name of Joel Purcell. And Joel was just a practical joker type guy, and he put the name Snake on me. It was quick off the starting line, so every time we'd come back from winning a race, you know, from the next heat, he'd say, "Oh, you snake in the grass." So quick off the starting line, and that's how all that started. It was just a nickname like you'd put on somebody.
Started touring around and just went from car to car to car, drove for myself, and then I drove for Ed Donovan. And Donovan always nicknamed everybody. He's one of these guys that everybody has to have a nickname, you know. At the time, there was a tall, skinny kid by the name of Don Prudhomme driving Greer Black and Prudhomme car, and they were really unbeatable. The car was fantastic. It was very fast, set all the records, won all the time. And we used to go, of course, racing too, and we used to, fortunately, we were one of the few cars that could beat him, and I usually had to cheat him with the starting line to be able to beat him, and he didn't take that real good a couple times. And that's where the Mongoose nickname came from, was with Ed Donovan.
After a while, it got to be kind of kicky, I guess. It was kind of neat because, you know, especially like a kid would come up and say, hey, Snake, can I have your autograph? You know, you could just write down Snake. You know, it was kind of neat instead of my last name Prudhomme, which was so long. So just writing Snake down was kind of quick and neat, and so I started enjoying it after a while. But just at first, I didn't like it at all.
Touring, barnstorming from track to track, being paid to race. It was what made Don and Tom professionals. It was a gypsy lifestyle. Convoys of tow rigs and trailers crisscrossing secondary highways. Destination, the next drag strip up the road. It was a life gladly embraced if it meant the chance to race.
When Don first got his own car, which was the Windswinder, I guess you could say I was his crew. It was him and I on the road, and our little dog. We used to take our dogs. For Don and I, it was an opportunity to see, we thought it was the world. I mean, and we went to places that I'm sure the average American has never even heard of. Most of them I can't even remember, but they didn't hold drag races in New York City or downtown Chicago. I mean, we went everywhere. It was kind of see the world, except all we ever saw were turnpikes, toll roads, freeways, interstates, side roads, tiny little motels, and kind of greasy spoon restaurants. We didn't have the finances to stay in a nice place, and I'd say we were pioneers. We spent a lot of time those early years on the road with Tom McEwen, with B.B. and Mulligan, another Southern California car. So we kind of traveled together. And one of us would say, gee, we stayed in this place. You know, it's not too bad, and it's only $12 a night for 4 people or whatever the price would be. And we almost caravanned. We were kind of almost outcasts at the time. There weren't a lot of people that knew what drag racing was all about.
By 1970, Don Prudhomme and Tom McEwen were among drag racing's top echelon of stars. That year, they put together the Mattel Hot Wheels deal. Now, the Mattel sponsorship and the accompanying promotions and advertising campaigns revolutionized the business of drag racing.
McEwen came into Keith Black's shop, and Keith Black, I actually shared a piece of the shop down there. He had a little stall that I worked out of, so Tom would be by just about every day, and I was hitting it big time on the race car, working real hard. And he came up to me and he says, hey, my mom knows someone that works over at Mattel Toy Company, and I'm going to go to them and talk to them about a sponsorship for the Mongoose and Snake. I said, get out of here, you're crazy. Mattel Toy Company, they wouldn't be interested in us.
Nobody had ever put together anything big, you know. So I had some pictures drawn and a bunch of stuff and went to Mattel, and they liked the idea, so that formed Wildlife Racing Enterprises, which was myself and Prudhomme for 3 or 4 years. And we went through that deal, and because of that, we were able to put together a bunch of companies, Coke, Champion, TRW, Federal, whatever, maybe 7 or 8 sponsors. It was a good deal. In those days, it was a lot of money, major sponsor.
Under the Mattel deal, Prudhomme and McEwen campaigned both dragsters and funny cars, drag racing's newest sensation. The two responded differently to driving the fiberglass skin machines.
The first funny cars, the first Hot Wheel funny cars, it wasn't a very pleasant experience. I really didn't care for it too much because the car was ill handling, and it was just a bunch of fiberglass around you, and I didn't care for that all that much. But the cars back then were quite crude compared to today's cars, so obviously it just wasn't that much fun. It had an automatic B&M transmission in it. Every so often it would blow the transmission out, and there would be oil all over the end of the course underneath the transmission. I was quite disgusted with the car, so I didn't enjoy it that much. Not until we started building some real supercars. I got involved with more of the design of the car, and John Butera came along and said, hey, why don't we build one this way? And then we started getting real race cars, started going real fast. Then I started liking that.
going from a funny car to a dragster, to me, what in those days wasn't much different driving one to the other, because they were all short wheelbase cars and everything, and didn't seem to make any difference.
Do you love funny cars?
Do you love women in halter tops and short shorts?
Then you'll want to be at US 69 Dragaway this Friday night for the ultimate in racing and good times.
Because that's when Don the Snake Prudhomme and Tom the Mongoose McEwen face off in a best-of-3 match race.
That'll thrill the acne off your face.
But wait, there's more!
Because every Friday night is Fox Hunt night, and all women over 69 get in free.
Don't miss this
The
one!
Snake and the Mongoose.
Fox on Friday night!
US 69 Dragaway. Be there or read about it in the police report.
In those days, we'd go on tour together. It was the two Hot Wheel cars, the Mongoose and Snake, and I'll tell you, we didn't have any trouble getting bookings around the country. Tracks would call us from everywhere trying to get the Mongoose and Snake to race each other. So it was a real successful team we had. It was called Wildlife Racing Enterprises. You know, we had a corporation, and it was a big-time deal. We were on top of the world.
It was a lot of fun in those days, and then you'd travel together on the road and then stay in the same motel, and you know, Don's wife would cook and bring food. I mean, it was just like one big family type thing. We had a little bit of problems sometimes winning and losing, but that's just part of the competition.
Well, I always wanted to beat him, and he wanted to beat me. When we'd go out on the Hot Wheel match races together, it was for keeps. It wasn't there. We weren't there, or at least I wasn't there to put a show on. I think Tom was there for the most part to put a show on, but I was running for keeps, so I'd run it as hard at a match race as I would at a national event or any place else. Tom was always an excellent driver, and he still is a great driver. He just never really worked as hard on the machine as I did, and I think that's why I was a little bit more successful than him.
So he did all his stuff with performance, and of course I had to come up with something. If you don't have the performance, you got to do something. So I was the bullshitter, you know, and I used to tell everybody I'm going to do this, and I'm going to win 3 in a row, and I'm going to beat him, and I'm going to do that, and a lot like the wrestling of today is, you know.
I think they kind of played off one another. I think that's why the relationship was so successful for so long. Business-wise, Don could be counted on more or less to win the races for the sponsor, and Tom could be counted on to entertain the sponsor completely. I mean, they actually benefited each other. They gave to their sponsors and fans what singularly one of them couldn't have given. It took both of them to give that.
Don Prudhomme, a racer who saw the business side of the sport as something to be tolerated, only a means to an end. Tom McEwen, a businessman who found a way to make a living doing something he enjoyed, namely drag racing. As the Snake and the Mongoose, they came to epitomize the sport during the early 70s. By the time Wildlife Racing broke up in late 1973, drag racing was coming into its own as a major motorsport, in part because of the efforts of McEwen and Prudhomme. Success in drag racing, however, required more than some good business sense in a car. It took a special breed of driver to race Top Fuel, a person able to tune out the distractions associated with guiding a nitro-fed grenade safely down the track at 200 miles per hour.
The engines in front of you, we had oil problems where the cars would start to burn a piston or hurt the engine. You'd start spraying oil back on your goggles. So a lot of times you go down the course steering with one hand and pulling your goggles down, just peeking over the top of them so you can see the finish light with your foot all the way down on the floor. Try that sometime. I mean, I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore. So that was one of the problems. And of course the other one, we didn't know a lot about clutches then, about blowing them out of the car. We had aluminum bell housings instead of steel ones or titanium like we have today. So we'd lose clutches and get out, you know, come out of the car and cut the car in half like on Jim Nicole's car. Fire was another major problem. You never worried about it. You were aware that something could happen for sure, but you didn't think much about that. I mean, we all had front engine cars. That was just the way it was. It was no different than having a rear engine car today and a kid just getting into the sport. I mean, that's all we knew was front engine dragsters. But they were dangerous. They, thank God that Don Gartless came along and got the rear engine dragster going.
Don campaigned a rear-engine wedge car with some success, but his attention more and more was focusing on the funny cars. Don found himself faced with many of the same dangers he had in his old dragsters. The greatest threat remained fire.
The fires? Fires are something that any funny car driver thinks about and is real concerned about. But with the safety equipment we have now, the good Simpson fire suits and the rules that they have out there now as far as having onboard fire extinguishers and different things in the cars, it's not as big a problem as it used to be, obviously. Well, the one I had at Orange County was a good one. Yeah, I remember that real well. The lights went out, boy, and it was very, very hot. Unfortunately, I didn't get burned, but I thought I was in big trouble at that moment. When you're a funny car driver and you drive one of these things, that's part of the deal. I mean, if a guy out there catches on fire, I'll say, hey, that's too bad, I'm sorry, Ace, or or McEwen, or Kenny, we'll lend you some parts or something, but they know what they're getting into. I know what I'm getting into. It's just part of the game. That'll be the thing that'll run me out of a funny car and put me back to a top fuel car would be the fires, yeah.
One of the signs of a motorsport's emergence into the big time is the establishment of world champions. Drag racing got its in the early 70s. Winning a world championship requires season-long consistency and an eye towards race strategy, concentrating on winning points in the long term instead of focusing on the immediacy of a particular race. Because of the effort required to win a world championship, it can mean more than an event win, a lesson Don Prudhomme learned in 1974.
Cheryl Greer ended up winning the world championship, and they made such a big deal about it. And he actually, it actually happened to me in Ontario, where I won the race, and Cheryl made enough points there to win the championship. And come to find out, we were real close in the runnings, and hell, I wasn't even paying attention to it. And it kind of got to me. It kind of made me mad because all the racers were congratulating him on the world championship, and I thought, what's that? So. The following year, Winston came up with this money for the world championship. Why? Tell you what, we got a piece of that. We went out and won it by a whole bunch. I think a larger spread, a bigger spread than anyone's ever had in the sport. We just ran away with it.
In 1975, there were 7 NHRA national events. Don Prudhomme completely overwhelmed his competition, winning 6 and finishing runner-up at the 7th. He not only won the world championship handily, but ended the year with the sport's first ever 240-mile-per-hour funny car run. In 1976, the NHRA National Tour was expanded to 8 events. Don Prudhomme began the year determined to better his record of 6 wins in a single year.
We've got quite a matchup here in the funny car semifinal. In the far lane, it's Don Prudhomme, the defending Gator Nationals champ and the current world champion. In the near lane, one of the true showmen of the sport, the man who invented touring. This is TV Tommy Ivo. They're off the starting line together. Prudhomme hazes the tires but recovers. And Don Prudhomme moves once more into the finals of an NHRA national event. 2 champions squaring off here in the finals of funny car. Don Prudhomme, who won the Winter Nationals just a month ago against Cheryl Greer, the 1974 funny car world champion. Greer starts to get sideways. He crosses the center line. Prudhomme has won his 3rd straight Gator National. Don Prudhomme has already won his 2nd consecutive Winston Funny Car Championship. As he squares off here against ending ace McCulloch in the finals, Prudhomme is looking for his 7th national event title of the year. His only loss of the season was to Gary Bergen in the finals of the U.S. National. And McCulloch is having problems. Starter Buster Couch is trying to get Ed up to the starting line. Prudhomme will easily win his record 7th NHRA National Event of the Year.
Winston came into our sport, and my God, I think they saved the sport. I don't know where the sport would be at today if it wasn't for Winston. When when they came in with that world championship, it put us right up there in the class of, you know, of other forms of racing. So I wanted a piece of that, and I knew that if we could win the championship, that we'd really set our place in the sport. You know, you'd be down as a world champion, a Winston world champion. It would really mean something in the future.
Don Prudhomme battling the flu all weekend is in the near lane. Roger Color, the Gone Lindemood in the far lane. The winner here will be Gordy Bonnet in the final. The Snake is coming off a win at the Winter National, looking for his 4th straight Gator National title. And Prudhomme red light. Lindemood gets a big break as something obviously let go in that engine. 1977 has not been kind to Don Prudhomme. After winning 13 races in 2 years, he's won only 1 race so far this season. Matched up against him here in the finals is Bob Pickett, driving Mickey Thompson's Chevy Monza. Prudhomme in the far lane, Army sponsored. Pickett in the near lane, Marine sponsored. Prudhomme's out first, but here comes Pickett. And at the finish line, it's Bob Pickett.
In the pits of our Top Fuel and Funny Car finalists, it is just absolute mayhem. Hot parts everywhere, dozens of hands in the act, the wrenches are flying. But there's one glaring exception, and that's in the pits of the sport's ultimate professional, Don Prudhomme. Just real, cool, and orderly. Everything in good shape, right, Snake?
Yeah, Steve, it's been going good. We haven't been hurting very many parts, and everything's just coasting along.
The number 1 qualifier, Don Prudhomme, a win here in the finals would give him a real leg up on his 3rd World Championship. His opponent in the far lane, Billy Myers. And Myers having problems. They can't seem to get the car started. Prudhomme will motor through for his 2nd win of the season, his 23rd national event crown.
We needed that number 1 really bad back then, you know, that, you know, but things are a lot different compared to things today, you know. It wasn't easier to win than it is today, but it was just different, you know. The competition was different, the money was different, the parts and pieces were different, you know. We didn't have computers on the cars and all those things you have to have today. So it was kind of a man and his machine.
No matter how well he did, he wanted to do more. It wasn't enough to win 7 out of 8 national events because he didn't win the 8. That never seemed to lessen.
2 of the biggest names in funny car racing, Don the Snake Prudhomme, Tom the Mongoose McEwen, matched up here in the finals at the Spring National. And McEwen has troubles. The reverser appears to be stuck. The crew is frantically trying to push the car into position. Prudhomme's away first. Prudhomme wins. In the pits, the funny car finalists, Don Prudhomme and Tom McEwen are getting ready for one of the biggest races of their long rivalry.
Your guys are frantically working on the motor, yet you're over here fooling around with him.
Well, it's just going back together right now. We got plenty of time, and I'm just starting to take it a little easier instead of thrashing so much on the thing. I've been watching him, and it seems to work. His biggest problem is he's not as serious a racer as I am.
Don Prudhomme in the far lane. He's got a 4th consecutive Winston Funny Car Championship almost locked up. His friend and race rival Tom McEwen in the near lane. McEwen looking for the biggest victory of his career. Prudhomme hazes the tires. McEwen pulls ahead and wins.
Very emotional moment down here. I've seen Don Prudhomme lose before, and it's usually a recluse. He gets in his truck, he leaves the racetrack immediately, talks to nobody. This is just a little bit different. Tom the Mongoose McEwen's son passed away last Sunday. Just an incredible final, very difficult to describe. As many times as I've been here, I have seen few moments packed with as much emotion as this one.
The hardest 4 years I've ever spent in my entire life was winning the World Championship. Not just me, but Bob Brandt, all the guys on the crew team that won that championship 4 years in a row. That was tough. You know, a lot of people thought we had it easy and didn't have anybody to race, but that wasn't true. We worked like dogs to win that championship, and I still think that we won it in fine style, and it was just the hardest 4 years I ever spent in my life.
4 years as world champion taught Don an interesting lesson. Always winning, always being number one might be good for the ego and good for the sponsor, but it was a definite handicap in a Mr. Popularity contest.
As time went on, it didn't feel as good to win it, because it's kind of like Kenny Bernstein now winning it a couple years in a row, and he goes up to get the world championship ring. A few people go, you know, not loud. You know, that's what happened to me. Towards the end of my fourth world championships, it was like, oh hum, Prudhomme won it again. And believe it or not, people don't like that. They don't like to see a guy win it 4 years in a row or 5 years in a row. They don't even like seeing him win it twice, you know, so that's the truth. I hate to say that, but it's the truth. And then your reputation, you know, people start saying things about you, you know, it got to be real tough, you know. I lost a lot of friends with few friends I had, you know, during those World Championship days. You hardly get anybody to talk you out the races.
The battle for the Winston Funny Car Championship has come down to this race and two men. Four-time winner Don Prudhomme and Raymond Beadle, owner and driver of the famed Blue Max Funny Car.
Don Prudhomme, you've owned that number one on the side of your car for 4 consecutive years. What do you have to accomplish today to keep it?
Well, it's going to be a difficult chore. If I go to the last round with Raymond Beadle, along the way, I'd have to set both ends of the national record. In track conditions the way they are, that looks doubtful. Or Raymond Beadle has to go out first round or second round, and I need to win the race.
You'd have liked to have qualified higher where you had lane choice.
Well, I certainly would, yeah. It's been a difficult track for us here, and we've been having our share of problems, and it's unfortunate at the end of the year that that happens.
And Tom McEwen will go right after you round one.
Oh, yeah, certainly, but I'm going to go right after him, too, and the race isn't over, and we'll see.
With Raymond Beadle losing just a few moments ago, this first round race between Don Prudhomme and Tom McEwen will decide the Funny Car World Championship. And you got to know that Tom's biggest fans right now are down at the far end of the track, Raymond Beadle and the entire Blue Max team. Prudhomme with dreams of a 5th year as number one, McEwen with dreams of being the spoiler. And Prudhomme instantly smokes the tires. McEwen cruises on for the win, and Raymond Beadle is the new Winston Funny Car champion.
I was disappointed, but at the same time I was somewhat relieved too, because it took a lot of pressure off my back. Got to remember that I was personally involved with the race car. I mean, pushing pistons in and out, doing valve work, doing clutch work, fuel system work. Just myself and Bob Brandt, basically, the two of us. And so both of us just wore out. They beat us down, and I needed a breather. I needed a chance to enjoy the World Championship, because I never enjoyed it during the whole time we were winning it, because you didn't have time to enjoy it. Just like, hey, you won, let's go back to work again. I mean, it was no enjoyment at all. Our sponsor at the time wasn't the type of sponsor that really enjoyed that. It didn't do a whole lot for him like it would a Skoal or a Pepsi. The Army was not that impressed with winning the World Championship. So basically, it was somewhat of a relief to be able to get back in our shop and start working maybe on some new equipment and so on, and take a vacation.
By the time Don Prudhomme won his 4th Winston Championship, drag racing had grown into this country's largest participant motorsport. Along the way, it had become an industry, with companies devoted solely to the business of racing, from manufacturers to sponsors. Men like Don Prudhomme, Keith Black, Roland Leong, and Tom McEwen, men who first approached drag racing as a hobby, now found it had become a profession.
At the time that Don started racing, as you say, competitively, the sport was, it was nothing. I mean, it's grown so much. It's a lifestyle for thousands and thousands of people. I mean, there's sponsors in this sport now that probably laughed at us 20 years ago.
So it took a long time, and our drag race engine business didn't really take off until after Don Prudhomme went on his own and left, which this is hindsight. And people would say, well, the reason the car runs is because Don's driving it. Well, I couldn't disagree with it because I thought so too. I knew the engine ran well, but I felt that he was making it win, and I know that he had to be there to make it win. So it was a long time, and people, you start doing something, they don't go out and spend a lot of money just because you did something for a short length time. It takes a long time to establish yourself. That was going on also at the same time.
In the 20-plus years since the Greer, Black, and Prudhomme dragster dominated the Southern California drag racing scene, Keith Black's business has grown into the #1 builder of fuel motors. Keith Black first succeeded because he had always looked forward. He continues to succeed today because he continues to look forward.
But I've always had the attitude that if I could turn the clock back, no way. If people say, would you like to be young? And I said, no way. Where I've been there once, and I made a lot of mistakes, but I did some things right, and I like where it is today. Things that aren't here, there's other things. I get a lot of satisfaction out of creating new things, which is what I'm doing now. It's just as much a challenge as racing was.
When Roland Leong first learned the art of fuel racing with the Hawaiian dragster, the engines were relatively simple by today's standards, and the amount of between-round work that a crew could or would do was minimal.
Basically, unless we burn a piston, in those days, if you hurt the engine during the race, very seldom do you pull it apart and fix it in between rounds. I mean, you just have to figure out how to make it run on 7 cylinders and hope it run as good or the other guy messed up so that you could beat him.
The fuel engine of the 80s is a marvel of sophistication, from oil pan to blower, from computer monitoring systems to multiple magnetos. 20-plus years of racing has made Roland Leong one of the acknowledged masters, and has also given him the perception to ride racing's emotional tides.
I feel, and I think everybody realistically has to feel the same way, that don't matter how well you did at different times, you're going to have your down days or sometimes even longer. Like I say, the hardest part is accepting it, and I think the more you do what we do, and you just about have to accept it or you go crazy.
For Tom McEwen, driving has always been his kick, and with the growth of drag racing came the chance to make a living racing. But as much as he loved the sport, there was some hesitation about committing to it as a profession.
I liked animals in those days, and I was going to Fullerton JC College, and I wanted to be like a veterinarian or a farmer or something, because I always had a lot of animals. And it just finally got to the point where I had to make a decision whether I was going to keep drag racing or do something else. And of course, I was a star then. I couldn't do nothing else. I had to read myself a national dragster and all that, so I couldn't go be a doctor or a lawyer or something. I had to be a poor drag racer, you know.
But not just any poor drag racer. Tom McEwen has distinguished himself as one of the sport's top personalities, an astute businessman and a great driver, an embodiment of the spirit of drag racing, a love of driving, the thrill of competition. By any definition, Tom McEwen has succeeded.
Successful. I feel that I've been successful in what I wanted to do. I always wanted to drive cars, win races, being able... main thing I wanted to do, I didn't think about winning races, I don't think, in the beginning. I thought about being able to drive the car. To me, one of those fuel dragsters was like riding a wild animal or something. I mean, the power, the noise, the smoke, being able to control that car to me was, I never thought I could do that, watching them drive.
As much as the sport has grown and changed over the years, As much as it has given back to the people who helped shape it, there are certain tenets of racing that never change, truths that stand the test of time, like the most basic one, the formula for winning.
Winning to me was always related to how hard you worked on the car. I mean, if you worked on the car all night long and built all this great equipment and worked hard, you would win. I mean, it would go together. Work hard, win races. Bottom line.
Don Prudhomme and Raymond Beadle, quite a matchup here in the finals of the 1980 Gator Nationals. Prudhomme wins. Don Prudhomme, coming off a win at the recent Grand Nationals in Canada, matched up here in the second round of the 1981 U.S. Nationals with Buzz Miller. And almost immediately, Prudhomme's car makes a move into the guardrail.
It's been a long time since you've made contact with anything like that.
Yeah, it has, but you know, when you're at the Indy Nationals here and you're running all out and trying to beat guys like Beadle and Bernstein and so on, I mean, you got to step on it, and you know, this is for keeps.
Your wife Lynn seemed concerned. She thought maybe you ought to be checked. You feeling all right?
I'm just fine. She's hit me harder than this.
We've seen some record-breaking performances here at the Cajun Nationals, and with 2 more rounds of qualifying, we should see some more. Coming up now is Don Prudhomme, locked in a battle with defending funny car world champ Raymond Beadle. Don Prudhomme has just become the first person to go 250 miles an hour in a funny car.
Yeah, I had that ever-loving feeling today about it. The car run 43 yesterday, and we're the first ones to run 240. It's nice to be the first one to run 250, regardless what Beadle does.
And you just took the #1 spot from Beadle with still 1 section to go.
Decent, yeah, I'm real happy about that. But Raymond's no slouch. We're going to have a tough race.
Okay, congratulations again. That could be a national record if you back it up.
I think that's dynamite. Thank you.
This is the last qualifying attempt for both Raymond Beadle and Don Prudhomme. Beadle looking to regain the #1 qualifying spot. Prudhomme looking for the 1% backup for a new national record. It's official. Don Prudhomme has established a new speed record of 250 miles an hour.
By 1982, Don Prudhomme had amassed 32 NHRA Oscars for national event wins. He notched his 33rd win at the Grand Nationals in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Historic event win number 34 came shortly after in Englishtown, New Jersey at the NHRA Summer Nationals. The winningest fuel racer in NHRA history, it would be almost 5 years before he won again.
For 10 straight years, Don Prudhomme has won at least one national event every season. But he's struggling through 1983, making it to the finals only once, losing to Mark Oswald at the Grand Nationals. If he wants to keep his streak intact, this is his last chance. Here in the semifinals, Don is matched up against John Brute Force. Don qualified #1 for this event, proving he's got the performance. The question is, does he have the luck? John Force has never won an NHRA event, although he finished runner-up twice, most recently to Oswald at the Summer Nationals. Wait, there's a leak on Prudhomme's car. It looks like a fuel line is sprung loose. Fuel is getting on those red-hot headers. There's a fire. Prudhomme scrambles out of the car. It looks like his weekend is over. A tough break for a great champion.
As the 1985 season drew to a close, Don Prudhomme was facing one of the bleakest moments in his career. His winless streak in NHRA competition had stretched to 3.5 years. He had progressively slipped in the point standing from 3rd to 7th to 10th. Struggling to regain his lost performance edge, Prudhomme was also faced with losing his sponsor. As the 1985 season ended, so did the last year on Don's Pepsi contract. Frustrated, bitter, it must have felt to Don like this could be his last race. If this was to be Don's last race, he intended to go out the way he came in, winning. He made it to the finals, falling there to the newly crowned Winston champion, Kenny Bernstein.
Bitter period, but those are some of the things that happen to you, I think, and people in my position or that's in the spotlight that basically gets burnt out of what they're doing. I was a little burnt out at the time, and I thought, hey, it's just, where's it all at? Where's the sponsors? Where's anything? And it just wasn't there. But because I hadn't been winning for so long, and because I didn't really have a good sponsor, I didn't really want to get back into the game and not have someone, I don't mean so much financially, but just someone that understands me and understands the sport and what we're trying to do out there. I didn't want a sponsor that I had to report to every week and make an excuse why I didn't win a race and why I didn't shake hands with somebody, you know. It's because I was busy or something, you know. And to get the right sponsor in the right situation, I just didn't think would happen.
Sponsor hunting in 1986 was not quite as simple as in 1969, when Don Prudhomme landed his first sponsorship with Wins. It was not only the cars that had gotten more and more sophisticated in those 17 years. Research proposals, race car mock-ups, target markets, video presentations, a far cry from knocking on Carl Wynn's front door. It took Don a year to find the right sponsor, but he put that time off to good use.
I think he realized by taking a year off how much he really enjoys the sport. Win, lose, draw, it doesn't matter. He missed being there in any capacity. I mean, he would have liked to have been there and not qualify, just to be there.
I think Skoll is the one that really changed me. It wasn't the year off as much as it was having them. Of course, I was able to relax and enjoy myself for that year, but getting hooked up with them was fun. It made it fun for me to go out racing again, and I think that's what really changed my attitude about the sport. It wasn't someone that I had to take along with me all the time or keep under my wing, sort of, you know, so to speak, a new sponsor in the sport. It's someone that was really had been in it for quite a while, been involved in Grand National Stock Car racing, so they understood it, and they just make it fun for me.
Don Prudhomme debuted his new car, a Pontiac Trans Am in Skoll livery, at the NHRA Winter Nationals. While Don was glad to be out racing, he was having problems trying to sort out a new car while bringing together a new crew. It was a tough assignment for his first race back.
For Don Prudhomme, this is his last chance to make this tough Winter Nationals field. Don is obviously having problems getting his new car to run well. A strong lead, but it's not enough. The snake doesn't make the show.
In the old days, I'd have probably slit my wrist, but during that time, I just had to bite the bullet and go on. You know, I had learned from that year off that, you know, for the sponsor's sake, for Skoll U.S. Tobacco, that I needed to be out the track the next day and sit around and sign autographs. And a funny thing happened. To me at that race. After not qualifying and coming back out on Sunday morning and to face the people, the crowd, spectators, first off in the morning I had the guys unload the car and it was sitting there, and I set up a little booth and sit around and started signing autographs. And there wasn't one person that asked me how come I didn't qualify. All they wanted was an autograph. And I thought that was amazing.
The next NHRA national event was in Gainesville, Florida, the Gator Nationals. Don tested extensively with the car prior to the event and came to the race knowing he could at least make the show.
What a difference a race makes. After having problems at the Winter Nationals, Don Prudhomme appears to have a handle on that new Skoll Bandit Trans Am. And what a way to welcome him back. A first-round matchup against old rival Don McEwen. McEwen was runner-up here a year ago and has been running strong throughout qualifying. center stage. Prudhomme's out first. Prudhomme pulls ahead and wins it by almost a car length.
Don Prudhomme's first win light on his comeback career. Congratulations. It's got to feel good.
Thank you. It's good to be back, really. You know, paired me up against the Mongoose first round. It's kind of strange. But
Like old times.
yeah, sure was. We just got to get some more runs on the car.
Quite a matchup coming up here in the second round. Two longtime funny car campaigners representing two ends of the spectrum. Don Prudhomme in the far lane, Bruce Larson in the near lane. Larson has been campaigning funny cars almost since they were invented, but never on the scale of Prudhomme. This year, Larson's teamed up with Joe Amato. Amato's crew chief, Tim Richards, has done wonders with that car's engine. In the first round, Larson drove away from Mark Oswald in the Candies and Used machine. Slight advantage off the line. Larson smokes the tires, too much power. Prudhomme rockets through for the win. The bad news, however, he'll be matched against defending Winston Funny Car champ Kenny Bernstein in the semifinal.
For so many years, you dominated funny car racing. Now you face the man who is currently in that position. How does that feel?
You know, it's tough to say. You can only ask so much out of one of these cars. No matter the race Bernstein or Hubie race, we're just trying to step up on it a little bit at a time, and I think we got a little bit more left. And obviously, it'd be nice to put him away because he's the hot dog right now, and it'd be kind of nice to put him away.
This has all the makings of a memorable confrontation. Kenny Bernstein in the far lane, Don Prudhomme in the near lane. 6 NHRA Winston World Championships between the two of them. For Prudhomme, this is a new role, underdog. Besides the clear performance advantage Bernstein has, there's a psychological edge. In 18 races, Kenny has won 11 against Don. Don's crew chief Mike Clover backing him up. Super wrench Dale Armstrong doing the same for his driver Kenny Bernstein, making sure the cars are properly positioned on the track for optimum traction off the starting line. They creep into the staging lights. They leave almost together. Bernstein's losing traction. He's tagged the concrete retaining wall. Don Prudhomme wins.
A 571, Don, into the final round. Tremendous.
Well, right now it's a little tough getting down the track. I appreciate what you're saying, but it's just a little tough right now, and we just got to sneak up on it, you know.
Well, Bernstein was having his problems in that lane.
Well, yeah, you know, but, we're having ours too, and being off that time, someone was telling me if Johnny Carson took a couple of years off, it'd be tough to be back on his number, but it's tough, I didn't realize how that much time would really affect us.
See you then.
Thank you.
Don Prudhomme began his day by meeting up with his old-time friend Tom McEwen. Now he ends the day the same way, facing off against Roland Leong and his driver, Johnny West. This race is a study of driver contrast. Prudhomme, with 34 national event wins, 4 here in Gainesville against West, appearing in his first ever final round appearance. The crews taking their time, getting the cars into position, letting the heat build up in those supercharged nitro-burning power plants. The drivers taking their time, focusing their concentration on the Christmas tree starting system. The tree goes green. Something goes wrong with West's car. Prudhomme motors through for his 5th Gator National title.
so from then on for winning, we had a few good breaks, let's face it, that race. You know, Bernstein was still the car to beat. He smoked the tires against us. We won the race. I'd like to have just flat out running, but that's not the way it happened. I don't say we backed into it, but we just didn't run as good as we should. You know me, when I want a race, I like to, rip their throats out. I just enjoy winning it, the right way.
The hardest part of being a champion, regardless of the sport, is finding the drive to keep reaching new plateaus. Yet, after 30 years of racing, Don Prudhomme still has things he wants to accomplish.
To be honest with you, I'm working towards being the #1 guy again. You may find that hard to believe, but to me that's a goal. To me, going out there setting a national record and just tearing them up is really self-satisfying, and that's what I live for. I mean, that's what Don Prudhomme is all about. I mean, that's what I want to do.
There are two sides to Don Prudhomme. There is the racer, the man whose achievements are among drag racing's greatest memories. Then there is the private man, the man whose personal expectations motivated Don Prudhomme, the racer, the man who had to learn to be comfortable with himself before he could enjoy his success.
He thought probably he had to be perfect because otherwise no one would like him or would even want to come see him race. I think now maybe that comes as you get older. You become more mature and you do accept that you are not a perfect person and you're not going to be a perfect person, and probably 99% of the people you know aren't. And I think he's a lot more comfortable with himself now.
I was watching the Skins game, the golf game here not long ago on TV, and they were interviewing Lee Trevino, and he said that he loved playing golf. He just absolutely loved it, and he couldn't wait to get up in the mornings and go out on the course and play golf. Couldn't wait. And I feel that way when I'm at the track. I can't wait to get up in the morning and go back out there. I like to go down as one hell of a drag racer. Yeah, one tough guy. I think so. I think that's the way I see myself. I think I'm pretty good at what I do, and I just like I like to show them that off.
Want the best seat in the house for motorsports entertainment? Then Diamond B Sports is your ticket for excitement. With over 35 spectacular titles from which to choose in the growing Diamond B inventory, you can build a home video library of your favorite motorsports action that you'll enjoy for years to come. For the drag racing enthusiast, Diamond P annually presents the entire NHRA Championship season in review. You get all the dramatic action as the best drivers chase the elusive NHRA Championship crowns. For an exciting and comprehensive look at recent drag racing history, there's Decade of Thrills 1 and 2, examining the most chilling, agonizing, and emotion-filled moments of the 70s and 80s. Funny car fans can't get enough of Fabulous Floppers 1 and 2. The sound and excitement of Pro Stocks takes the stage in Hot Rods from Detroit. And Top Fuel is what's hot in Kings of the Sport.
Interested in personalities? Well, Diamond P presents these legends in Garlits 1 and 2, Don Prudhomme, and Shirley. If it's monster trucks, mud racing, and tractor pulling that cranks you up, then Shake, Battle, and Roll and Shake, Battle, and Roll 2 are for you. For sprint car fans, the unpredictable winged world of outlaws are featured at the famed Knoxville Nationals. Beginning with Knoxville 87, you can get the entire collection of annual mayhem. And fasten your seatbelt for a treacherous journey up, over, and off-road. Takes you from the Baja Desert to outrageous stadium racing and a decade of off-road thrills. Plus, don't forget about Supercross. It's an aerial dogfight for these two-wheel warriors as they fuel the intensity for Light to the Finish. For the truck enthusiast, you can't beat the 3-volume set entitled the Truckin' Trilogy. From the Truckin' USA series, you get all the best trucks, competition locales, and trick trucks, quick trucks, and freewheelin' America. And finally, to complete your library, it's the best-selling series of And They Walked Away, volumes 1 and 2, and the latest, And They Walked Away 3. Here are the most breathtaking moments from the Diamond P archives. Racing's most spectacular spins, flips, wrecks, and fires. And in each perilous incident, the driver beats the odds. To order any of these terrific videos or to receive a full-color catalog detailing all the titles available, just call 1-800-421-0725 or write to the address on your screen. Diamond P Sports. We make motorsports come alive.